Fears that the Middle East could explode into all-out war are ratcheting up today after Iran vowed vengeance for a deadly Israeli missile strike on its embassy in Damascus, the capital of Syria. At least 11 people were killed when a consular annex was reduced to rubble by strikes which Iran says were carried out by Israeli F-35 fighter jets. Now, among those 11 killed were two top Iranian generals, Brigadier Mohammad Reza Zahidi, who we understand commanded Iran's Revolutionary Guard in Syria and neighbouring Iraq, and Brigadier Mohammad Haji Rahimi. Also among the dead, a representative of the Hezbollah terrorist group, Hussein Yusuf. Now, both Iran and Hezbollah have vowed vengeance. Iran's President Ebrahim Rasi saying that this strike will not go unanswered. The suggestions that perhaps Israel has crossed a threshold with a strike on an embassy. Embassies are sovereign soil of the nations that they belong to. So this was a strike on sovereign Iranian soil in Syria. And in one sense, it is an escalation, and the concerns that this could spiral are in many ways well founded. Interestingly, today we've heard reports in the local media in Syria and in the region that America appears to be distancing itself from this strike, officials saying they had no advanced knowledge. But equally, at the same time, it's worth looking at the wider context. Strikes by Israel against Iran are nothing new. Strikes by Iran and its proxies against Israel are nothing new. If we look back to just this year alone, we've seen both sides trading missiles and drones in Iraq, in Syria, and indeed an Iran-backed militia has claimed responsibility just this week for a strike against an Israeli base in Eilat in southern Israel. It's not clear whether that strike in Eilat was the catalyst for this strike in Damascus. It would appear that the reason for this missile strike was the meeting between these Revolutionary Guard commanders and the representatives of Hezbollah. It's known that Hezbollah is a proxy of Iran. It is armed, resourced by Iran. It is in some ways controlled and encouraged, but nonetheless maintains an element of autonomy as well. Hezbollah, based primarily in southern Lebanon, which borders Israel, has been engaged in a low-level simmering conflict with Israeli forces over the last 6 months and before, but particularly over the last 6 months, whilst Israel has been fighting its assault against Hamas in the Gaza Strip. And there have been constant concerns that that conflict in the north could escalate into an all-out conflict. The concerns of all-out conflict aren't just limited to Lebanon. If you think back to January, Pakistan and Iran were trading missiles, both of them claiming that they were hitting each other's respective terrorist sanctuaries, where Iranian separatists based in Pakistan were hit by Iran, Pakistani separatists based in Iran hit in a reprisal attack. Of course, the broader context as well really is the conflict that is continuing to grind on with deadly consequences in the Gaza Strip. In the 6 months of conflict since the October 7 attack, which was launched by Hamas terrorists in Israel, some 32,000, almost 33,000 people are thought to have been killed inside Gaza. Now, Israel says 13,000 Hamas terrorists, Hamas militants and fighters have been killed in that conflict. That largely chimes with the figures from the Palestinian authorities, who say that 2/3 of the 32,000 people killed are women and children. About 1 million people, more than 1 million people, are facing catastrophic food insecurity, according to the United Nations. And the international community, including the United Kingdom, including the United States, have resorted to airdropping food into the Gaza Strip to try and alleviate some of that hunger. But there is a recognition that it's almost impossible to get enough food in via airdrops. And indeed, what's really needed is for the borders to be opened, or for perhaps a seaport, a proper functioning seaport, to get more aid into Gaza. And of course, the people trying to get that food aid in among them are humanitarian workers, and news breaking this morning of the tragic deaths of at least 7 international aid workers working for the American charity World Central Kitchen. We understand 7 people, including 3 Brits, a Polish national, an Australian national, and a dual US-American citizen and a Palestinian national were killed when their vehicle, which was clearly marked with the emblem of the World Central Kitchen, was hit from above in what is believed to have been an Israeli airstrike. World Central Kitchen, the charity, have condemned it, and they've said they believe this was a strike by the Israeli Defense Forces. Australia's government has come out very strongly and condemned it as unacceptable. So that in itself unlikely to, the strike on the World Central Kitchen in itself unlikely to contribute to this escalation, but nonetheless it will focus minds on what is happening in Gaza as citizens in the respective countries of those aid workers take stock, and perhaps it will bring home to those audiences what has been going on for many, many months in the Gaza Strip. Meanwhile, we will wait to see how Iran chooses to take revenge. Now, of course, if you are an Israeli diplomat living abroad, then you may well think that you are, with good reason now, more of a target, because Israel has targeted an Iranian embassy. We may expect to see the possibility that Iran may target Israeli diplomats or missions around the world. And we've just seen in the last few days suspected Iranian agents attacking an Iranian journalist here in London. He was a journalist working for Iran TV, which is an opposition television station based in London but broadcasting into Iran, staunchly critical of the Iranian regime. Tehran showing perhaps by this stabbing that it maintains the ability, the capability to attack people it sees as critical of the regime, enemies of the regime around the world. Some context to that, though, we understand that Tehran employs criminal proxies to carry out that sort of dirty work. Doesn't necessarily have the same sort of sophisticated overseas operations that we might expect of other hostile actors. For example, Russia, which we know has conducted nerve agent attacks in this country, which has assassinated its enemies, including a Chechen exile a few years ago in Berlin. But nonetheless, I think in the wake of what happened in Damascus on Monday, combined with what's been happening across the region in recent months, there is concern and there is anxiety to see how Iran responds, and again what that will elicit from Israel in turn.